Princess Lyra stood on the balcony of the Valorian palace, her eyes tracing the sharp crystal towers that reached into the violet sky. The city below buzzed with hovercrafts and alien beings moving in perfect order. She had been born into this world of power and privilege, raised to rule one day as queen. Yet today, she was no longer a princess. Her father, the alien king, had accused her of treason. The council had spoken, but Lyra knew the truth. Her father had grown jealous of her popularity among the people. They saw her as a fair and wise leader, someone who could bring change to the empire. That alone was a threat to him. "You are no longer welcome here," the king had said earlier in the grand hall, his voice cold and metallic. "You are cast out, Lyra. Leave and never return." The guards had stepped forward, but she did not resist. She could have tried to fight, but against her father, even with all the skill she had learned, she was powerless. The palace gates opened, and she was escorted onto a small spacecraft bound for Zephyr, a harsh and desolate moon far from the capital. As the spacecraft descended through Zephyr's thin, pink-tinted atmosphere, Lyra stared at the barren land. Below, jagged cliffs rose like the teeth of a sleeping beast, and dust storms swirled across rocky plains. No palace, no city, no servants, only survival. The ship landed with a harsh jolt. The door opened, and the cold wind slammed against her face. Lyra took a deep breath and stepped onto the dusty ground. Her gown, once made of shimmering fabric that glowed in the light, was now torn and useless. Her crown, a symbol of power, had been taken away. She had nothing but herself. She walked alone, each step sinking into the dust. The landscape was quiet except for the occasional screech of native birds or the howl of creatures in the distance. She knew this moon was dangerous. Many had come here for punishment or exile, and few survived. Lyra tried to find a shelter, but there were only rocks and caves. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, and thirst made her lips dry. She thought of her father and his cold, unyielding face. She had always believed he loved her, but love in the Valorian way was power and control. She had learned this lesson too late, as much. She wandered. She noticed something strange, a figure moving against the wind. It was a human, tall and strong, carrying supplies. He seemed calm, unafraid of the harsh moon. Lyra had seen humans before, on distant trade planets, but they were rare here. Most humans stayed away from Valorian territory. "Who are you?" Lyra called, her voice cautious. The man stopped and raised his hands to show he meant no harm. "Name's Elias," he said. His accent was strange to her ears, but his tone was calm. "I've been trading here for rare minerals. You shouldn't be out here alone." Lyra narrowed her eyes. "And why do you care?" "Because no one should be left to die if I can help it," Elias replied simply. There was no fear in his eyes, only honesty. Lyra was surprised. Most beings in the Valorian Empire feared her father and would not dare to speak to a princess cast out. Yet this human seemed to ignore that fear. "I don't need help," she said, but even as she spoke, the cold wind made her shiver. Elias offered a small folded tent and some water. "It's not charity," he said. "You need shelter and food. I can help you survive." For a long moment, Lyra considered refusing. Pride was a dangerous companion, but hunger and cold were louder. She accepted the water and tent, grateful despite herself. That night, inside the small tent, Lyra studied Elias. He was not like anyone she had known. No palace, no titles, no council, just a human, strong, clever, and kind in a way that the Valorians often lacked. She realized that humans did not worship power the same way her people did. They valued courage, honesty, and loyalty. "You really don't fear my father?" she asked. Elias shrugged. "I respect him as a ruler, but I don't fear him. I know that even the strongest can be challenged if the heart and mind are willing." Lyra was quiet. She had never heard such words in the royal palace. Her people respected only strength and fear. Human courage was different. It came from choosing to act, even when the odds were impossible. Over the next few days, Elias taught her how to survive on Zephyra, how to find water beneath rocks, how to set traps for small creatures, and how to avoid the dangerous predators that prowled the cliffs. Lyra had been trained in combat, but human methods were different, simpler, clever, and effective. She began to understand that survival did not always require power or weapons. It required thought, patience, and courage. And Elias had plenty of all three. One evening, a storm blew across the moon, violent and unrelenting. Lightning cracked across the pink sky, and the winds threatened to tear the tent apart. Lyra clung to the supports, terrified. Elias held her hand, steadying her. "You'll make it through," he said firmly. "You're stronger than you think." Lyra realized she had been thinking of herself as weak, cast out, powerless. But here, on this harsh moon, she was learning something new. True strength was not inherited from birth. It was chosen. She could choose to survive, to fight, to reclaim her life. And she had a human beside her, someone who believed in her when her own father had cast her aside. When the storm passed, the sky cleared, revealing Zephyra's twin moons. Lyra looked up, a small spark of hope lighting in her chest. Maybe she was exiled, but she was not defeated. And maybe, just maybe, humans could teach her something the Valorians never could. "Why are you helping me?" she asked Elias quietly. "Because sometimes the right thing to do is help someone when no one else will," he said simply. "And because I believe in you." Lyra stared at him. It was strange, comforting, and powerful. A human, someone from another world, chose to stand by her, not for gain, not for glory, not out of fear, out of choice. For the first time since she had been cast out, Lyra felt that perhaps she was not alone. And perhaps, with the right ally, she could one day face the father who had betrayed her. She did not yet know how or when or even if it would be possible. But she knew one thing. She would not face it alone. And for a princess cast out by her own blood, that was enough. For now. The sun rose slowly over the jagged horizon of Zephyra, casting long, pink shadows across the rocky terrain. Princess Lyra woke to the sound of Elias moving outside the small tent, preparing their meager breakfast. She rubbed her eyes, still unused, to the rough cold of the moon. "You're up early?" she said, sitting up on her worn blanket. "I like to get a head start," Elias replied with a smile. "This place doesn't forgive laziness." Lyra watched him quietly, noticing the ease with which he moved over the uneven ground. Humans were strange creatures, she thought. They did not possess the strength of Valorians, nor the speed, but they had something else, something sharper. A mind that could see danger before it arrived, and a courage that refused to bend to fear. "Where do we start today?" Lyra asked. Elias handed her a small piece of flatbread and some water. "First, we find food. Then we practice survival." Lyra frowned. She had learned combat, strategy, and etiquette in the palace. But survival on Zephyra was unlike anything she had known. The ground itself seemed to fight her, with hidden holes, loose stones, and sudden gusts of wind that could knock her over. She realized quickly that even a single misstep could be fatal. Elias led her to a nearby ridge where small creatures darted between the rocks. "See those?" he said, pointing. "They're called Zephyra sprinters. Fast, clever, but easy to trap if you watch carefully." Lyra watched closely as he demonstrated a simple trap. using stones and a loop of wire to catch one. The creature squeaked but remained unharmed once captured. "You'll need patience," Elias said. "Strength alone won't get you far here." Lyra tried to replicate his method, fumbling at first. Her fingers, accustomed to fine jewels and delicate fabrics, struggled with the simple tools. But Elias guided her gently, correcting her mistakes without mocking. Finally, a sprinter was caught. Lyra felt a spark of pride. It was a small victory, but it was hers. "You see," Elias said with a grin, "it's not about being the strongest. It's about thinking, watching, and acting at the right moment." Lyra nodded. She realized that humans had a kind of bravery the Valorians often lacked. Where her people relied on power and fear, humans relied on wit and determination. And it worked. As the days passed, Elias taught her more: how to find water hidden beneath the rocks, how to build shelters that could withstand Zephyr's fierce storms, and how to read the signs of the moon's dangerous wildlife. Each lesson brought new challenges, but Lyra learned quickly. She was not just surviving, she was adapting one. Evening, while they rested in a cave, Lyra asked, "Do you ever fear my father?" Elias shrugged. "Not really. I respect him as a ruler, but I don't fear him. Fear doesn't help you survive. Courage and cleverness do." Lyra thought about that. Her father ruled through fear, commanding obedience through terror. But humans could challenge even the strongest by using their minds and hearts. She began to see why Elias could stand beside her, while so many others would bow and run. Their peaceful routine was soon broken. One morning, while scavenging for supplies, Lyra spotted a Valorian patrol moving across the cliffs. Word of her exile had spread quickly, and bounty hunters sought her capture. Elias motioned for her to hide behind a jagged rock. He whispered, "Stay low, don't move." Lyra held her breath as the patrol passed, their armored boots clanging against the stone. Elias had anticipated their path, positioning them perfectly. Once the patrol moved out of sight, he gave her a reassuring nod. "You see," he said, "planning and observation beat raw power every time." Lyra felt a mixture of fear and admiration. Her father had strength, weapons, and authority, yet here they were, two exiles on a harsh moon, evading him using nothing but skill and strategy. She realized something profound. Humans, though smaller and physically weaker, could challenge even the mightiest of Valorians if they relied on their courage and intellect. That night, as the twin moons rose over Zephyr, Elias shared stories of his people. He spoke of humans who had explored distant stars, survived impossible odds, and even influenced alien civilizations. Lyra listened, fascinated. Humans were fragile in appearance, but their spirit was formidable. "I never understood humans before," Lyra admitted. "We have power, but it seems wasted at times. You have so little, yet you achieve so much." Elias chuckled. "It's not about what we have, Princess. It's about what we choose to do with it. Humans aren't the strongest, but we can be the smartest, the kindest, the most stubborn when it matters." Lyra smiled faintly. "Then perhaps I can learn from you. Perhaps I can become more than what my father wanted me to be." Elias's eyes gleamed. "You already are. You survived Zephyr when many would have given up. You're learning to think like a human, Princess. That alone makes you dangerous in a good way." For the first time since her exile, Lyra felt a flicker of hope. She was learning to survive, yes, but also to trust another being, someone who had chosen to stand beside her not out of obligation, but out of belief in her. Humans did not bow to fear or status. They stood for what was right. Days turned into weeks. Lyra grew stronger, wiser, and more confident. The harsh lessons of Zephyr, combined with Elias's guidance, taught her that exile was not the end. It was the beginning of something new. One evening, as they sat atop a cliff, watching the sun sink behind jagged peaks, Lyra spoke quietly. "I must confront my father one day. Not for revenge, but to show him that strength alone does not define a ruler. Humans, you have shown me that." Elias placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "And I will stand by you. Humans don't run from impossible odds. We fight, we survive, and we help those who are willing to act." Lyra looked at him, a sense of determination settling in her heart. She had been cast out, betrayed, and left to die. But she was not alone. With a human ally by her side, she could survive, learn, and perhaps even reclaim her place in the galaxy. The twin moons of Zephyra glowed softly above them. Lyra took a deep breath, feeling the wind against her face. She had endured exile, but she was ready for the challenges ahead. And for the first time in her life, she felt something she had never known in the palace: hope. The journey from Zephyra to the hidden human settlement was long and treacherous. Lyra and Elias traveled in a small shuttle, weaving through asteroid belts and avoiding Valorian patrols. The princess had never seen space like this, chaotic, dark, and full of danger. Yet, for the first time, she felt a thrill in facing it, not fear. "This route is risky," Elias said, his hand steady on the controls. "But the humans in the settlement can help us prepare. They have resources and knowledge that even the Valorians do not expect." Lyra nodded. She trusted him completely. Over the weeks on Zephyra, he had taught her patience, strategy, and courage. The lessons were more than survival. They were about thinking like a human. And humans, she had learned, were clever, adaptable, and brave. As the shuttle approached the settlement, Lyra saw a cluster of domes nestled into the side of a large asteroid. Smoke rose from chimneys, and small vehicles moved busily between buildings. It was a thriving community, hidden from the Empire. "Welcome to Haven," Elias said quietly. "You'll see. Humans can survive anywhere." The shuttle landed gently, and they were met by a small group of humans armed with tools and weapons. Their leader, a tall woman named Marin, stepped forward, her eyes sharp but cautious. "Who are you?" Marin asked, glancing at Lyra. "This is Princess Lyra," Elias said. "She has been exiled by the Valorian king. I am Elias, and we seek allies." Lyra straightened, though her heart pounded. She had always ruled with power and authority, but here she would have none. She had to prove herself by courage, not title. The humans exchanged skeptical glances. One of them, a young man, muttered under his breath, "An alien princess? Why should we help her?" Lyra caught his words. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. "I may be exiled, but I am not powerless. I have knowledge of the Valorian Empire, their strengths and weaknesses. I can help you, if you help me." Her words hung in the air. The humans were not used to being commanded by royalty, but they recognized honesty and determination when they saw it. Marin studied her for a long moment. "Very well," Marin said finally. "You may stay, but you will earn your place here. Nothing comes free in Haven." Lyra nodded. She was not offended. This was the first time she had been judged by actions rather than birth. She liked it. Over the following days, Lyra worked alongside the humans. She helped repair equipment, carried supplies, and studied their tactics. She was impressed by their ingenuity. With limited resources, they built weapons, defenses, and systems to detect Valorian movements. Elias watched her closely. "See? Humans don't rely on strength alone. We use what we have, think ahead, and work together. You're learning fast." Lyra smiled faintly. "I see it now. My people fear change, fear humans. But you survive, you adapt, and you fight back when necessary. One evening, while they gathered around a holographic map, Marin spoke. The Valorian king will not leave his daughter alone. Bounty hunters and patrols will be searching for her. If we are to help you, Princess, we must plan carefully. Lyra leaned over the map. She studied the patrol routes, the supply lines, and the fleet positions. We cannot confront him directly yet, but we can weaken his control, disrupt communications, intercept supply routes, and rally support among his own people. They will see his cruelty and may turn against him. Marin raised an eyebrow. That is bold and dangerous. Lyra met her gaze. I have nothing left to lose. But with your help, I can do what my people cannot. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. And you will not be alone. Humans do not abandon those who fight for what is right. The humans began to respect her. They saw courage, intelligence, and adaptability, not the title she once held. They began to share their knowledge, teaching her to move stealthily, to read signals, and to improvise with tools and technology. Days turned into weeks. Lyra trained with humans, combining her royal skills with human ingenuity. She learned to plan attacks, scout enemy movements, and understand the importance of morale. The humans were clever, resourceful, and brave. Together, they formed a small but formidable team. One night, as Lyra and Elias sat under the dim lights of the settlement, she asked quietly, Do you think humans can truly challenge the Valorian king? Elias smiled. I don't think, I know. Humans survive impossible odds every day. We find ways when others see none. And you, Lyra, are learning to see as we do. That makes you powerful in ways your father will never understand. Lyra felt a spark of hope. Her exile had been a punishment, a humiliation, but it had also been a gift. She was learning, growing, and finding allies she never could have imagined. She realized that her strength was no longer defined by her birth. It was defined by courage, wisdom, and the friends who stood beside her. As she looked around the settlement, Lyra saw humans working together, laughing, arguing, building, and planning. They were small in stature, fragile compared to Valorians, but they were united. Their unity gave them power, and now she was part of it. I will reclaim my place, she said softly. Not for revenge, but to show that leadership is more than fear and power. Humans have taught me that. Elias nodded. And I will stand with you. We will face the Empire together. Lyra smiled, feeling a sense of determination stronger than any she had known in the palace. She was no longer a princess of privilege. She was an ally of humans, a fighter and a strategist. And together, they could change the balance of power in the galaxy. As the twin moons of Zephyra rose in the sky, casting their pale light over the asteroid settlement, Lyra felt ready. The path ahead was dangerous, full of enemies and uncertainty, but for the first time she felt that she could face it. She was not alone. She had humans beside her, brave, clever, and unwavering, and with them she would rise. The asteroid settlement of Haven faded into the distance as Lyra and Elias piloted a small shuttle toward the Valorian homeworld. Stars streaked past them, and the blackness of space seemed endless. Lyra's heart pounded with anticipation and fear. After weeks of preparation, training, and planning, they were finally taking the first step toward confronting the king who had betrayed her. This route is dangerous, Elias said, checking the navigation panel. The Empire patrols are stronger near the capital. We'll have to be careful. Lyra nodded. She had grown stronger in these weeks, learning human ways of thinking and surviving. She was no longer the naive princess who had been cast out. She had learned to be patient, clever, and daring. As they maneuvered through asteroid fields and debris belts, Lyra marveled at the human's skill in navigating the shuttle. Every move was precise, every calculation thought out. Valorians relied on powerful engines and technology, but humans relied on ingenuity and adaptability. And in these small ships, that advantage often turned the odds. Their first test came. Quickly, sensors picked up a Valorian patrol ship blocking their path. The massive vessel glided silently, its weapons scanning for intruders. "Hold steady," Elias whispered. "I have a plan." He activated the shuttle's stealth systems and adjusted their trajectory. Lyra held her breath as they flew through, a narrow gap between two large asteroids. The patrol ship scanned the area, but humans had predicted every move. Finally, they slipped past undetected. Lyra exhaled. "You are fearless," she said, impressed. Elias shrugged. "Not fearless. Careful, humans survive because we plan and adapt. Fear doesn't help, action does." The shuttle continued, weaving through the belt, until they reached a small, hidden space station where a human scout had spotted an incoming Valorian fleet. They had to act quickly. One human scout had been captured by the patrols, leaving them with valuable intelligence at risk. Lyra felt a surge of responsibility. "We cannot let him be taken to the capital," she said firmly. Elias nodded. "We won't. Humans never abandon one of our own." The rescue plan was simple in concept, but difficult in execution. Using small, maneuverable ships, they intercepted the patrol vessel quietly. Lyra applied the strategies she had learned from Elias and the others, moving with precision and calm. Her hands, once delicate and unused to rough tools, now guided controls and mapped enemy movements. They infiltrated the patrol ship, avoiding detection, and freed the captured scout. Lyra marveled at the human ability to improvise. Where Valorians relied on strength and intimidation, humans relied on speed, cleverness, and timing. Every action was calculated, every move essential. When the rescue was complete, they returned to the shuttle. Lyra felt a thrill of accomplishment. Not only had she survived, she had contributed. She had worked as a strategist, a fighter, and a leader alongside humans. She realized she could stand against the Empire, not alone, but with allies. During the journey to the capital, Elias shared stories of human history and their daring exploits. They had survived famine, war, and even alien encounters that seemed impossible to overcome. Lyra listened closely, absorbing every lesson. Humans were not stronger than Valorians, but they had something just as powerful: courage, intellect, and the will to act. "I never understood humans before," Lyra admitted one evening, staring at the stars. "You are fragile, yet strong, weak, yet clever. How do you do it?" Elias smiled. "It's not magic. We choose to act, even when it's hard. We don't give up. That is what makes us strong." Lyra reflected on her own life. In the palace, she had relied on her title, her heritage, and fear to influence others. Now she saw another way. Through courage, strategy, and loyalty. Humans had taught her this. They had shown her that strength was not measured by power alone. As they neared the Valorian homeworld, the stakes grew higher. Patrols increased. Scanners were more sensitive, and the vast fleets of the King's Armada moved strategically. Every step required careful planning. One wrong move could lead to capture or death. Lyra and Elias worked together, blending human ingenuity with Valorian knowledge she had gained from her royal training. She suggested alternative routes, clever distractions, and decoys. Elias implemented them flawlessly. The combination of their skills allowed them to move closer to the capital without alerting the king's forces. One night, Lyra looked out at the planet below. The city gleamed with alien architecture, tall spires, bright lights, and intricate designs. It was beautiful, but oppressive. She thought of the king and his cruelty. She thought of the exile that had cast her onto Zephyra. But she no longer felt fear. She felt determination. "I will not be afraid," she whispered to herself. I will face him, and I will show him that strength is not only in power, but in courage, loyalty, and thought. Elias, overhearing her, smiled. And you will not face him alone. Humans do not abandon those who fight for what is right. Lyra felt a sense of unity she had never known. She was no longer a lonely exile. She was part of a team. Humans had taught her survival, strategy, and courage. Together, they could challenge even the mightiest of Valorians. The journey was far from over. They still had to enter the capital, avoid detection, and confront the king directly. But Lyra was ready. She had learned patience, strategy, and courage. She had learned that humans could turn even impossible odds into victories. And most importantly, she had learned that she could trust others to stand beside her, even against the greatest power in her world. As the shuttle descended toward the atmosphere of the Valorian homeworld, Lyra took a deep breath. The twin moons above shone faintly in the distance, casting light over the sprawling city below. She tightened her grip on the controls. The time has come, she said quietly. We face the Empire. Elias nodded. And we will face it together. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt that victory was not impossible. She was no longer just a princess cast out. She was a strategist, a fighter, and a leader. With humans beside her, anything was possible. The city below awaited, full of danger and challenge. But Lyra knew she was ready. And with courage, intelligence, and loyalty on her side, even the strongest king could be challenged. The capital of the Valorian Empire loomed beneath them, a city of shining crystal spires and endless light. From the shuttle, Princess Lyra studied the sprawling metropolis, remembering the life she had lost within its walls. She had been cast out, betrayed by her father, and now she returned, not as a frightened exile, but as a strategist and leader with humans at her side. Elias sat beside her, eyes scanning the city through the shuttle's sensors. The patrols are heavier than we expected, he said. We'll need to move carefully. One wrong step and we'll be caught. Lyra nodded. Then we will use what we've learned. Humans survive impossible odds every day. We can be cleverer than the king's fleet. The shuttle descended quietly, slipping between the towers and landing in a shadowed courtyard. They emerged to find a small group of humans and defected Valorians waiting. The plan was simple, but dangerous. Infiltrate the throne hall, expose the king's lies, and rally support from the council and citizens. Lyra felt the weight of the moment. Every lesson Elias had taught her, the patience, strategy, and human ingenuity, was about to be tested. She clenched her fists. She was no longer a princess dependent on fear and birthright. She was a leader who had earned her place through courage and thought. They moved swiftly through the city, using hidden alleys, maintenance tunnels, and shadows to avoid detection. Lyra marveled at the humans' cleverness. Simple tools, improvised devices, and quick thinking allowed them to bypass patrols and surveillance systems that would have overwhelmed even the most powerful Valorian warriors. Finally, they reached the outer doors of the throne hall. Guards stood in formation, alert and unyielding. Lyra signaled to Elias, who deployed a small distraction, a device that emitted light and sound, drawing the guards away. The humans moved silently, and Lyra followed, heart pounding but mind focused. Inside the hall, the grandeur of the Empire was undeniable. Crystal chandeliers floated above, reflecting light in dazzling patterns. The council chambers were filled with alien advisors, their eyes wide as Lyra stepped forward. Elias stayed close, ready for anything. The king entered, his presence commanding and cold. "Lyra," he said, voice echoing in the hall, "you dare return?" "I do not return as a subject," Lyra replied, her voice steady. I return as someone who has learned the truth. Strength is not only in fear or power, it is in courage, loyalty, and wisdom. The king's eyes narrowed. And who are these creatures beside you? Humans, Lyra said. They have taught me much. They survive where others fail. They think, act, and fight with intelligence and courage. The council murmured among themselves, unsure how to respond. Lyra seized the moment. You have ruled through fear, Father, she continued. You cast me out because you feared what I could become. But your methods have only sown distrust. Your people see your cruelty, and it will turn them against you. Elias stepped forward, speaking in a calm but firm tone. The Valorian king underestimates humans and their allies. We do not rely on power alone. We rely on courage, strategy, and unity. You cannot control what you do not understand. The king's face twisted in anger. Enough! He bellowed. Guards moved to attack, but Lyra and Elias had anticipated it. The humans and defected Valorians formed a defensive line, using clever maneuvers and tools that disoriented the attackers. Lyra's leadership was clear. She directed movements with precision, combining her royal knowledge with the human strategies she had learned. The council watched in shock as the princess and her allies gained control. She spoke clearly and firmly, exposing the king's lies and revealing his treachery. He punished those who spoke the truth, destroyed those he feared, and ruled through terror. A ruler who fears his people cannot lead them. Some council members, inspired by her courage, stepped forward to support her. The king's power, built on fear and intimidation, began to crumble. Humans and aliens united proved that intelligence, planning, and bravery could challenge even the strongest tyrant. The king realized, too late, that he had underestimated the humans and the princess. Lyra moved with confidence, signaling Elias to disable the hall's defensive systems. The king's guards were confused, unsure how to respond to such coordinated action. Finally, the king's authority was broken. He could no longer command, through fear alone. Lyra faced him, standing tall. Your reign ends here, she said. Not with violence, but with truth, courage, and the support of those you sought to control. Defeated, the king retreated, and the council took charge. Lyra, guided by Elias and the humans, began to reorganize the empire. The throne was not just hers to claim. It was hers to share with those who valued justice and cooperation over fear and cruelty. Elias turned to her, smiling. You did it. Humans fight alongside those who act with courage. You've inspired them all. Lyra looked around at the council and citizens, many of whom now supported her leadership. She realized something profound. True power was not inherited. It was earned through courage, loyalty, and intelligence. Humans had shown her this. Together, they had overthrown tyranny. The city, once oppressive, began to feel alive with possibility. Citizens whispered of change, and the council promised reforms. Lyra knew the work was just beginning, but she was ready. With humans beside her and a vision of fairness and justice guiding her, she could transform the empire into something stronger and wiser than it had ever been. For the first time since her exile, Lyra felt pride, not for a crown or title, but for what she had accomplished. She had faced impossible odds, relied on courage and strategy, and inspired both humans and Valorians to see a new path. Thank you, she said to Elias, her voice soft but full of meaning. I could not have done this without you. Elias smiled. You did this, Lyra. I only stood beside you. Humans fight with those who fight for what is right, and you have proven that you do. As the Valorian capital settled into a new order, Lyra looked toward the stars. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and opportunities, but she knew she was ready for whatever came next. With humans by her side, courage in her heart and wisdom guiding her decisions. There was no challenge too great, no tyranny too strong. Lyra had been cast out, betrayed, and left to face a harsh world alone. Now she stood victorious, not just as a princess, but as a leader who had learned the power of courage, unity, and human ingenuity. The empire had changed, and so had she. And the story of a human standing beside an exiled princess would be remembered as a turning point, a testament to courage, loyalty, and the strength of choosing to do what is right. The Valorian capital had changed. The crystal towers, once symbols of fear and tyranny, now glimmered with hope. Citizens walked the streets freely, no longer afraid of punishment for speaking the truth. Princess Lyra, once exiled, now stood. At the center of this transformation, Elias remained by her side, a steady presence in the midst of political change. Humans had proven their worth, not through brute strength, but through courage, ingenuity, and loyalty. Lyra had learned that power alone did not make a ruler respected. It was action, fairness, and wisdom that earned true allegiance. The council had agreed to reforms, guided by Lyra's insight and the humans' practical strategies. New systems were put in place to ensure justice and equality. Citizens had a voice, and leaders were held accountable. Lyra walked through the city, observing the changes she had helped bring about. The people no longer feared her, they trusted her, and that trust was more powerful than any crown. Yet the road had not been easy. The king, though defeated, had retreated to the outer colonies, gathering those still loyal to him. There were threats, challenges, and dangers that lingered like shadows. But Lyra felt ready. She was no longer the naive princess who had been cast out. She had faced exile, learned from humans, and now led an empire with courage and clarity. Elias approached, her one evening as the twin moons rose over the city. "The king may return," he said, "but now you have allies who will stand beside you, humans, Valorians, and others who value justice." Lyra nodded. "I am ready. I have learned what it means to lead, not by fear, but by action and thought. Together we can face any challenge." She thought back to Zephyra, the harsh moon where she had first learned survival. It had been lonely, cold, and dangerous. Yet it had also been where she had learned courage, strategy, and the value of human ingenuity. Elias had been there then, teaching her to adapt, to think, and to act. Without his guidance, she might have remained lost, a princess without a purpose. Now, she realized that exile had been a lesson, not just punishment. It had shown her what was truly important: loyalty, intelligence, and the courage to stand for what is right. Humans had taught her that strength was not only in power, it was in action, unity, and determination. The people of the empire began to notice the difference. Markets thrived, communities worked together, and former fear-driven leaders were replaced by those willing to listen and learn. Lyra spent her days meeting citizens, understanding their needs, and guiding reforms. Every decision was careful, thoughtful, and aimed at building a better future. One morning, Lyra and Elias visited the academy, where young Valorians were learning alongside human instructors. Children of both species worked together, sharing knowledge, learning new skills, and embracing cooperation. Lyra smiled as she watched them. The future of the empire was not in fear or power. It was in education, collaboration, and courage. "You see the change?" Elias asked, his eyes scanning the classrooms. "This is what happens when humans and others work together. We survive, we adapt, and we inspire." Lyra nodded. "And we will continue to grow. The empire will be stronger, wiser, and fairer. Together." Yet even in these moments of hope, challenges remained. The king's loyalists still lingered, planning, scheming, waiting for a chance to return. Lyra knew she could not ignore them, but now she understood something vital. Leadership was not about fighting alone. It was about empowering others to act with courage and intelligence. Humans had shown her that, and now she would use that lesson to guide her people. Elias stood beside her on a balcony overlooking the city. "You've come a long way," he said softly. Lyra smiled. "I have, but it was not just me. Humans stood beside me, taught me, and inspired me. I would not be here without their courage and guidance." He nodded. "And now, you lead not only as a princess, but as a symbol. Your people will follow because they trust you, not because they fear you. That is something even the king could never understand." Lyra's gaze drifted to the horizon. The twin moons of the Valorian world shone brightly, casting light over the city and its people. She felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that she had turned exile into opportunity, fear into courage, and weakness into strength. "Elias," she said quietly, "thank you for standing by me, for believing in me when my own people did not." "You didn't need me to believe," he replied. "You did all the hard work. Humans just stood beside you. That is what we do." Lyra nodded. She knew he was right. Courage was not given, it was chosen. And she had chosen to act, to lead, and to stand with those who valued justice. Humans had taught her that lesson, and she would carry it forward. As the days passed, Lyra worked tirelessly, guiding reforms, mentoring leaders, and strengthening alliances. The empire began to thrive, citizens lived without fear, and humans proved themselves as trusted partners in governance and strategy. Together, they had achieved what seemed impossible, a fair, just, and strong empire. One evening, as the sun set and the twin moons rose again, Lyra stood on a balcony looking out over the city she had once been cast out from. She felt gratitude, determination, and hope. Exile had been the beginning of her true journey, and humans had shown her the way. The Valorian Empire was no longer ruled by fear. It was guided by courage, wisdom, and unity. And at its heart stood a princess who had learned to lead, not because she was born to power, but because she chose to act, inspire, and fight for what was right. Elias joined her, and together they watched the moons rise, casting their light over a new dawn. Lyra smiled, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready. She had humans beside her, courage in her heart, and wisdom to guide her people. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and opportunities, but Lyra no longer feared it. She had faced exile, betrayal, and impossible odds. She had survived. She had learned. And she had risen. A new era had begun, not just for the Valorian Empire, but for all who chose courage, unity, and wisdom over fear. And Princess Lyra, once cast out, now stood as a symbol of hope, a leader forged not by privilege, but by action, loyalty, and the lessons of those who had stood beside her when it mattered most. The empire was hers, not by birth, but by choice, courage, and the unbreakable bonds of trust. And the story of a human standing beside an exiled princess would be remembered as a testament to the power of bravery, unity, and the strength of choosing what is right.